Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have, here at 2 o'clock in the morning, we have Andor. This is a new Star Wars series that tells you kind of the birth of the rebellion. Maybe not kind of, probably actually does, and it will become more apparent as time goes on as to how much Cassian Andor, as we know him from the Rogue One Star Wars story film. If you've seen that film, you kind of already know who he is. And here in this case, we get to know him a little bit more. Why is he such a badass, but also so committed to rebelling in his own way? We have also. This is, by the way, this is Diego Luna playing the lead character, Cassian Andor. We do see. Remember in Rogue One, he's the guy that the rebellion, Mon Mothma, the leader of the rebellion, brings in at a time when they're not really sure he's the guy. He gets the job done, but his methods are questionable. And we're going to see Mon Mothma in this series as time goes on. We do not see her in the first 3 episodes, which premiered just 2 hours ago on Disney Plus, and I've watched it from the minute it came online. And yeah, and each of these, by the way, each of these episodes are around 40 minutes each, 38, 42, 43, something like that. Without the credits, they're a little bit less, but credits in the recap, or credits at the end and the recaps at the beginning. If you cut those out, you can blow through these in a good 35 minutes each or so. But yeah, we see Mon Mothma. Old school Star Wars fans will know who that is. If you have no idea who Mon Mothma is, I'm sorry. You may not have any interest in this show whatsoever. But I caution you, because there's a chance that you could enjoy this show, this series, without having any knowledge or understanding of the greater Star Wars universe saga films. There isn't a Skywalker to be seen for parsecs. There is no cameo appearance from R2D2 and C3PO just trolling through the screen. That's from what I understand, that is not a thing that's going to happen in this. Yes, there are absolute clear ties to the Star Wars universe because it is the Star Wars universe. I mean, but characters we know, like Mon Mothma, is a character we know. She existed in the original trilogy. She existed in the prequels. She has been a member of the Republic Senate, I believe. I don't know, the leadership, but eventually she grows to push against the reign of the Empire and Emperor Palpatine and everything else. And she kind of builds a kind of a quiet rebellion against their methods and their mission. In this case, though, somebody has to get their hands dirty, and Andor is the type of guy to do that. And we get pretty much an origin story in these first 3 episodes, and they do create. There's a reason why they released 3 in a shot. In this 2 hours ish, it creates a full story arc, and I'm not going to spoil anything major or anything for you, because odds are, I don't know if you need me to convince you. If you're a Star Wars fan already, I don't know if you need me to convince you to watch this. This might be something to say, hey, you know what? If you have no interest in Star Wars, or you don't know much about Star Wars, or you're curious, and maybe you are coming to me for whatever reason to go, does this guy, the Star Wars geek, does he care about this? Is he going to give it a good recommendation? And I'm going to say yeah. For me, anything Star Wars, anything to dip my toe into that universe. I would just go to Disneyland back in the day and just wander into Batuu and hang out in the Black Spire Outpost and just sort of just drink in the sound and the smells and just the architecture, everything else. Yes, they were trying to sell me something constantly. A droid here, a lightsaber there, a trinket everywhere else. But at the same time, I just genuinely loved being in that realm, just hearing just by the way, the background noise of just the Millennium Falcon existing near you, it was enough to make me happy. So In this case, though, this fulfills my kind of my fantasy of what it would be like. You ever have people ask what franchise, not franchise, but what world would you like to step into in fiction? Would you like to live in the world of Dune? Probably not. Or about Harry Potter, or just, or maybe like Marvel superheroes and things like that, which is our real world, but outside our window, as they say, but with superheroes and everything else and villains. Or Star Trek. Or in that sense, in the future, I mean, would you want to live there, or would you want to live in this era of Star Wars? I don't think I would want to live in this era of Star Wars. The Empire is at an all-time high, and desolation and poverty and destruction are around every corner if you are not in power. Sounds familiar in some cases, in some parts of this world, but hey, everything is reflection. Every popular media these days, forever, for centuries, reflects the culture in which it was born out of. So, yeah, this is definitely a story of a guy who is very much pushing back against an empire, a government that was put into place by evil men, and he's doing his part. And this is him going from just a kind of, not a I don't know if he's a scavenger necessarily, but he's a wheeler dealer, and he has a mission of his own, which I'm not going to spoil. He has a personal mission of his own that threads throughout this, but along the way he gets kind of recruited into the rebellion. And we, even by the end of this, has not technically happened yet. But if you saw the 9-minute preview that they had on here, and also in theaters when they re-released Rogue One for a weekend, you had an idea of what's going on there. Stellan Skarsgård, which you might recognize from the Thor films and Avengers films, he's in this as well. He plays an important part of Andor's recruitment to the rebellion. Let's just say. But at the same time, we get a lot of little just nuanced pieces. We get the grim and gritty and dirty and real world. You wouldn't even know it's Star Wars, honestly, in many cases, unless you were just. If there weren't droids everywhere and alien-looking dudes just wandering through the shots here and there, they're all there. But you don't see an astromech. You see a droid, a B2EMO, I think. B2EMO is Cassian's droid sidekick, but he doesn't look like any droid we've seen before. And we see glimpses of what look like protocol-type droids in the background here and there. And we see aliens that we kind of seen before. With some of those faces look familiar, but it's not characters we've seen before. Of course, everything... just space, the starships and everything else, it has that feel, but this is not the bright and shiny part of the universe that has lightsabers and cloaks and Jedi and everything else. I have a friend who's not really interested in seeing anything Star Wars that doesn't have Jedi in it, but hey, his loss, but he's gonna watch it anyway this week. We're gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it again with my friends, not at midnight, because hey, some people have lives, and I don't, so here I am. But yeah, I also didn't want to be spoiled on anything, just in case. This is going to be one of those kind of things, I imagine, that it's a slow burn drama. It's the kind of thing that you would benefit from watching a second time, which I'm going to do on later this week. And just in a few days, but in this case, and I think altogether, I think it'll flow a whole lot better once you know where this is headed, and the interconnected storylines and politics and violence and everything else that comes into play in seeing this character evolve. And I think we're introduced to another character who's on the other side of things, who is kind of the police, a guy who believes in justice and doing things right. He's one of the few American accented characters in this. Everybody else is a pretty heavy British accent, or in Diego Luna's case, Guatemalan. But mostly everybody, especially anybody in power, just like in the original Empire, anybody in power tends to be pretty British. But in this case, there's a character you need to keep an eye on that we are following through this, who sounds very American, and he, I think his storyline is going to reflect very much what Andor is going through, but in a different direction. Of course, they intersect, but that can't help but intersect. They're in the same show, but I think it's going to be interesting, important to watch, not just Cassian, of course, but this character as well. And he has a whole Cassian has a whole supporting cast here. I want to say some of these names. Now, you know what? I can't even say half of these names because these sound like names were made up for Star Wars, like alien names. Noof Olasam, Adria Ajona, Alistair Mackenzie. Okay, that's Wilf Scolding. Yeah, it's you'll Clemens Schick. Yeah, okay, yeah. No, nothing against them. I mean, I think this is a well acted show. It's got some interesting seeds being laid. By the way, this doesn't just take place in one time period. This also gives us a full understanding, for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's more story to be told, but in the first 3 episodes, it gives us a really good understanding about where Andor came from, where Cassian Andor was born, where he lived, what kind of person he was before he grew up. And we get to see him, of course, in the modern day. And they flip back and forth between these two eras just willy-nilly. At one point, I almost thought that, I thought that it was playing a trick on us, but no, it's pretty clear. But there are moments that reflect each other at these different phases in his life, and that makes it a little bit more interesting to watch. But don't expect big hero's journey kind of stuff. Cassian makes some pretty heinous choices when he has to, when he's up against a wall, just as you saw in Rogue One. He's not the traditional good guy. He is not Luke Skywalker. He's Han Solo. If Han Solo was allowed to be really dark, if he was allowed to not just shoot first, but shoot Greedo in the face 40 times first. Okay, Cassian doesn't do that, but it's still the idea that, Cassian shoots first. Let's just say that. Technically. Given a choice to negotiate or shoot, he will shoot. But is he the hero for this job? Is he the hero of the rebellion? Of course, we see that story play out in Rogue One. This gives us a whole lot of background, and I haven't read a lot. I've tried to stay away from spoilers and things like that. But I will say that this is the kind of thing that is meant to just flesh out not just this character, which maybe you cared about him or not. I don't know. I mean, when you saw Rogue One, you'd be like, okay, that was a good movie. Okay. But in this case, you're going to see what drives a man to join a rebellion who is this type of man, I guess, who would technically, in many cases, people's eyes, be a villain, to become a guerrilla level rebel, to stand up against a vast, powerful empire, against impossible odds, and what he can do in the face of all of that. And he states it pretty well in the 3rd episode. If you saw the preview that they played, that they have on here, and was in front of Rogue One re-release, he talks pretty clearly about how he gets things done and why the Empire doesn't seem to notice him. I think it's only going to build, and this is one of the longest series. I think it's like 16 episodes. I don't know if it's all going to be in one shot. I think it might be 2 seasons or something. I'm not really sure, but it's going to run for the rest of this year at least, and I'm looking forward to it. It's, like I said, this is not like any Star Wars film or TV series we've had before. In the other cases, like Obi-Wan or even The Mandalorian, still has ties to the Star Wars we know. Even with the Grogu, the child, he's a baby Yoda. He's like that. There's still ties to the Jedi in that. Of course, with all the other cameos and appearances, with Boba Fett and everything else, definitely super big ties to Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, and everything else in the Clone Wars era when Boba was younger. Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously, that's a humongous bridge between eras in that series, and Ahsoka, of course, from extending from the Clone Wars. So in this is a spin-off of a movie that was technically a spin-off of the main saga, but isn't required watching. It's not required watching for a Star Wars fan. Well, I mean, for a casual Star Wars fan. For a Star Wars fan like me, it's absolutely required watching. That's just the way it is. It's gonna happen. That's why I'm going to be watching it at least twice in 1 week, every single one of these episodes. So, yeah, I say, Star Wars fans, obviously you're watching this. That's not even a question. But if you want something a little bit different, and you're kind of a casual Star Wars fan, and you're just like, well, I don't know. You might find this to be an entry into Star Wars in a way that you might not expect. If you like good anti-hero dramas, I don't want to say Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad, yes, definitely is an anti-hero type of situation, but it's definitely not the same type of show. But you know what I'm talking about. Some of the golden era television, not highbrow, but it's less focused towards kids. Let's just say that. It's like the original Star Wars films were meant for kids. The whole saga, it's a kid-friendly series for the most part. Yeah, and the kid in all of us. I think little ones would get bored with this. Little ones would definitely like, what is going on? It might move a little bit too slow for them, because there's you don't see stormtroopers. Darth Vader's not there. There's not a bunch of lightsabers swinging. It's a very different type of show, but it gives you the feeling of that you have just stepped into the more realistic corners of the Star Wars universe, where there are no Jedi, in an era where there are no Jedi, at least publicly, that anybody knows of. Jedi are a myth at this point. And it looks like our world, just on a different planet, or planets. It feels like our world. If we had droids, more droids rather than just ones I see at conventions. And God knows the new one, the B2EMO, I'm sure somebody's already working on that one to show up at Star Wars Celebration Europe next year. I bet you money there's going to be one of those made by a fan. Just the way it is. They made a BB-8. Fans made BB-8 for the movies. They hired fans to make BB-8. So, R2-D2 is still my favorite, so that doesn't change anything, but I think you'll get a kick out of this new droid. But beyond that, this is not your mom and dad or grandparents' Star Wars. This is a little bit different, but it still remains faithful to the original, and I love it. So, yeah. Let's pick tomorrow's episode. Maybe it's Star Wars.
596.
596. Could be. Well, it's kind of in that range. It might be thes, though. 596. It is toward the end of the list. Oh, no. It's definitely not Star Wars. Because there's only, so far, we have only a few more days left in this quarter, and we're going to reset the entire list. And so, there's a total of 607 different things to choose from in this whole quarter. And that number randomly selects a number from this list. If you're new to this, by the way, as I'm explaining it, and whatever that number is, 596, pulls up something that I have alphabetically listed that I have not watched yet, presumably, on Disney Plus. I have seen this film already, but I'm going to watch it again, because this is technically the first official X-Men film that we'll be watching on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. We are watching smack dab in the middle of the second era of the X-Men films. We're watching X-Men Days of Future Past, based on a story of the same name very different though. Favorite, longtime favorite story from the original comics from Chris Claremont and John Byrne. So yeah, and Terry Austin was inking that, right? I'm pretty sure. Anyway, X-Men: Days of Future Past. That's what we're watching next in the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye.